Alright, hello and welcome to the Devstream 75 breakdown. Lots of stuff is going to be happening today. We're going to be getting an update that is going to change a lot of things and is going to drastically shift the meta. But first, let's talk about other things that are happening this weekend. There's going to be an event live on all platforms, Double Affinity, and the Proxy Retribution event. That's a repeat of a previous event. For those of you that did not did it, you can get completion of that. And it was if it's the one I'm thinking of, because I haven't actually gotten on to do it yet, it's a pretty good one. Most of the Corpus ones have actually been pretty solid, and I remember that one being quite good and involving a lot of the Hyena pack. Remember that being quite fun, so that should be good to see again. And then we have the update. So, there's going to be a lot in here, and I'm going to be streaming later today after this goes live, testing everything. And I don't want to give, like, harsh opinions before I actually test these changes, but there are some very significant nerfs and very significant like changes to how Warframes function that I'll probably have an entirely separate video where I go over what has actually happened, and I'm going to be working on after all these fucking changes. It's going to require an entire new review of all the Warframes, so that is immediately on the top of my priority list for getting that done. Because things are going to be greatly different after this update goes live. So what they've done, though, the passives are in. Some of them are much worse than others. That should be fun. Not much changes there, though. The passives are generally pretty tame, based on the previews that we saw and some of the leaks that had happened. Reworks and tweaks. From what I have seen of the Volt rework and the Mag rework, it appears like they're both quite good. Of course, that will require testing and seeing the actual numbers behind this stuff, because we still don't have them. Which is why I'm waiting to give, like, my full opinion on those things, because those will also probably get their own videos going over what's new with these Warframes. And the nerfs. Okay, so this is... we don't have a lot of the hard numbers, but in text, without the hard numbers, these changes actually seem good for the game. And I know that that will probably not sit well with a lot of people that are like used to playing these Warframes maybe, and like my favorite Warframe, Valkyr, got nerfed. Not 100% happy about it, but I think they're kind of moving towards more of what I want out of Valkyr actually, so I'm still fine with the changes. So Blessing has been significantly nerfed. It's now going to be... the damage resistance you get out of it is in a 50-meter range, which is still relatively large, and you're going to have an icon on you for who's actually within the blessing range, so they can receive the blessing. But it's also not based on only Trinity's health now. It's going to be based on the collective like health restored and then squared, and then they're going to get your percentage out of that. What we're starting with for resistance and stuff. It's going to be really interesting to see, because alone, it's just you, and you can get to 99%. So 99% Trinity is still a thing by herself, which is fine. But the thing has always been in a party. So what really matters for this change is, what is the output number that you get when there are 7 other players in the party? What is the output that you get when there are 4 other players in the party? Because if you say, give a party of 4... where you only restore your health from 2 to max, if you do that, and then you have, say, 50% damage resistance, that's still a good buff. It's not as incredible, but it's still a good buff, and is like nice and defensive. But on the 8-player scale, it might make Blessing Trinity way less useful in LOR as compared to just taking frames that can just simply survive. How that one works out is going to be very divisive, I think. First of all, in terms of like opinions of people, I think some people are going to really love it, some people are going to really hate it. I don't know, I need to see the number. It really depends on what the actual performance of Blessing is now in real scenarios. There's potential for it to be good, though, and bring Blessing to a more reasonable resistance point, as opposed to the absurdity that it is now. Because I don't really think it's up for debate that 99% resistance for the entire party for like 25 seconds at a time that you can constantly refresh. It's a little on like the overpowered side. I would have liked it to maybe be like, well, we capped it at 95, we capped it at 90, and you still do the same thing to get there. That would make it a little more palatable for me personally, and I would be kind of happy with that change in like general. But let's move on from that. We can talk about that more whenever all these things change, and on stream and stuff today. Exalted Blade is changing. Exalted Blade's waves are going to have fall off at distance, and they're going to have some fall off based on punch through enemies. So we don't know what the actual fall off numbers are, but what this does mean is that Excalibur is more incentivized to get up close. Also, the slide attack for his Exalted Blade is now going to cost half the energy of his 2, which is maybe a little much and I don't really think that needed to be implemented if you're incentivizing him to get close and then making getting close cost more. Doesn't really seem great, but in general, incentivizing Excalibur to get really close to do his incredibly high damage is still really good, and which a lot of people seem to forget this, incentivizing Excalibur to get close actually increases your damage, because if you're fighting high-level enemies and your actual weapon touches the enemy, like the waves have always been very powerful, and it's what people have always used, but a lot of people don't seem to realize that the waves are not the whole damage of your swing. You also have the fucking sword, and if you actually hit an enemy with that, the damage that you can output is incredible. And of course your finishers and stuff. So how Excal plays may change a little bit, and it's a minor nerf there. As for Hysteria, Hysteria is going to be... I'm worried that it is going to be useless, but it is going to be more active, and I don't know how good that is in general. So basically, whenever you hit 4, you build up damage on yourself. Like, you have like the counter in the top right, and it hasn't really done anything as long as you've been murdering the enemies. Like, there's not much to it. There's like a... It's never been an important number before. It's going to be an important number now. So basically, the longer you're in Hysteria, that number up there is the damage you will take if there are enemies, like, near you whenever you exit Hysteria. This makes nullifiers essentially an instant kill for Valkyr, where if you get nullified, you're probably dead instantly. Like, no questions asked, you just come out of Hysteria and you're on the floor, don't even need to be shot. So that makes nullifiers even more dangerous than they already were for Valkyr, which I feel like is fine. Like, increasing like how powerful that enemy is against her seems reasonable, considering she's still probably going to be very, very good. And then the longer you're in Hysteria, it's going to take more and more energy to do that, up to a cap. What that cap is really determines whether or not Valkyr is still going to be a endless, like an endless capable Warframe, without some like significant build tweaks. Hopefully, it will still keep Valkyr in a good place, but make her more active in like having to like maybe turn off Hysteria in safe places and like re-up and stuff. I'm kind of worried about it, but it feels like it might just make Valkyr a lot more interactive, which I'm fine with, because that's kind of what I want out of Valkyr in general, because she's a little brain dead, like right now. Like, whenever the update comes live, I think you're gonna have to think about Valkyr a lot more, and I'm actually pretty happy about that. The big one. So this is Prism. This is Mirage's 4. This ability is line of sight now. This, if I'm to be honest, while I do appreciate the usefulness of this, how it is now before the update, I don't think anyone could possibly give me an argument as to why this ability shouldn't have been nerfed, if I'm going to be completely, like, real with you. This ability was able to completely trivialize so many different game types and so much content, and it was just the hardest and best crowd control in the game that isn't just outright murder. It's so powerful, and because blind is so powerful and has been so powerful, that I think the nerf is very justified in terms of it being line of sight and not going through walls anymore and being able to stun like an 80-meter radius of just no one can do anything to you. That stuff's fine. To compensate for that, they buffed her 2 minorly, which I feel like doesn't matter at all, because the 2 has never been great, and it probably will continue to not be great. But her 4 also received a damage increase, so at lower levels, Mirage may be a little more apt for low-level farming, which it's hard to say how that will end up with Mirage. There are still other good builds for Mirage that aren't just prism spamming, So I feel like Mirage will continue to be a good Warframe, but won't be like trying to edge her way into like the S rank of being way too good, which I feel like is fine. It's a good change for the game at large, I'd say, but of course these things need to be tested, which is what the stream will be for later today. Those are going to impact the game in a big way, and I expect that there will be A, a lot of salt, and B, a lot of just people that don't know what to do now, because the meta of like blessing prism it's been going on for a while, and I know a lot of players that like can only do like some hour survivals with hysteria Valkyr. Maybe they're gonna have some trouble adjusting to the new stuff because it was kind of the easiest way to do that, but things have to change. Exalted Blade maybe got nerfed a little bit too hard in the energy thing with the slide attacks. That probably could go, and we'll see how the fall-off damage works. Overall, I think that's reasonable changes. If they're too much, then maybe they'll need to back it off a little bit, but they seem reasonable. They're coming from a good place of wanting to make the game more fun and interactive, and like not just a total stomp like in the high-end content like raids. So yeah. Otherwise, new weapons. We got some news about the Sai. So the Sai are not a new weapon grip, they're dual daggers, so please do not be excited for them, because dual daggers are fucking terrible. They're getting a new stance, but unless these things have some absurd damage number attached to them, or some just like other ridiculousness, they're just not going to be very good. No dual dagger right now is even relatively good. They've got nothing going for them, so the Sai will probably look very cool and be completely useless. I'm very disappointed in that, but that's what we got. Otherwise, we have the Spear Primary, and it is just as weird as it sounds. So it looks like this, and it is a gun and also a javelin. It's very, very strange. So this is actually a new weapon grip. It's a very, very strange weapon in that it's a primary that you will be able to throw with your alt fire. So, A, do we have to go pick it up? B, what kind of stats justify a weapon like this? Like, at what point do the stats need to be at where this weapon is not just a silly gimmick that you can use, and this weapon is actually good, which is really interesting for me. Because, like, let's say it's a critical hit weapon, for all intents and purposes. Let's just say it's a critical hit weapon, it's a javelin that you can throw, and then otherwise it's like, just like this like beam laser that we see here. If it does like reasonable, like let's say it's just under Soma Prime levels of damage output on like its regular shooting, but then whenever you like flip it over and like go to the javelin mode, if you get like it'll have like an increased critical multiplier, and you're going to be hitting like easy, like maybe like 300k headshots. That's like maybe justifiable as a weapon type that you would actually be incentivized to use, that you can throw to kill big targets, but otherwise can just have like a good gun that is very strange. It's a really interesting weapon type. It is very, very cool, and I feel like there's a lot of fashion frame to kind of go around this with like just using a bunch of weird fucking weapons. Really cool. Seems awesome. Otherwise, Limbo we have heard he is the next step for the rework. It appeared that they were thinking that he's going to need some incredible changes, like just across the board, which I'd agree with, because Limbo really doesn't. He keeps getting nerfed, and there's just nothing going his way right now. So maybe we can rework him into something that's very, very good, like just great all around. That's what I would want, just to see Limbo become a Warframe that is good, because he looks good. His design is good. It's just his powers don't follow that up. So hopefully that rework is going to be great. We'll see how these ones are, so we can kind of predict how Limbo will turn out. And then we heard that raids are on hold for now, which is really unfortunate, because I very much like the raids, and I was kind of looking forward to Nightmare Jordis and how hard it was going to be. However, I understand that raids are not exactly super popular. They don't get done by like a large majority of the community, and like there are a bunch of higher ranked players that just don't participate in it, and like there's a ton of players that just don't do it. They just don't engage with it, especially Jordas, like Arcwing involved and stuff. Like, there's a bunch of players that just don't. I personally really enjoy them, so it's a little unfortunate, but based on what they said, they kind of want to have more complicated game modes as like a ramp up into raids to get people adjusted to the mechanics. So that seems interesting. Maybe after we do that, we can get some really cool, interesting raids, maybe dealing with the sentience and stuff. I think that would be a lot of fun. But it is kind of disappointing that we're not going to be getting new raids anytime soon. For me, anyway. And then we have the new tile set. So this is the asteroid base that is going to be featured in the War Within, and we had Rebecca walk through that area. I felt like this was the most interesting thing that we saw from that, because it's a very large courtyard with this like security system in the center, a really like open sky. It seems like this map is, provided the invisible walls are not like really pulled in, it seems more open. Like it seemed like there's a lot of like just space to move around, which a lot of the tile sets are really, really cramped with a few exceptions. So having a tile set that can maybe take advantage of some new enemy types, because we're going to be getting new enemy types in the War Within, taking advantage of new enemy types and giving us interesting encounters with enemies. There was some interesting turret placement that we saw that can maybe change how you approach a situation and what warframes are good for like certain scenarios, along with the rebalances of things. I think that the War Within is going to be really interesting, if not only for how maps will change, because it seemed like there was just a lot to the map and the design was really nice. Also the new security system, however that security system works, I'll be interested to see how extreme it is, because like just from looking at it, it's like, oh, don't fucking get seen by that. I don't know. It's really interesting to me. I think that there's a lot of potential there. But that is Devstream 75. I'm very excited for this update to come out. I'm going to try and get like a couple hours of sleep so that I can stream for a very long time testing all this new stuff. And it should be very interesting, so I hope you will join me. And I'll see you tonight or tomorrow. Definitely tomorrow, for sure. But probably also tonight.